You're listening to the Woman of Value podcast. You are about to hear the story of a woman who is following her dreams and passions and creating positive change in the world.
Stop beating down on the doors that won't open. Go into the doors that open, even if you're like, I didn't want to do improv, but okay, I'm good at it. Because that door will lead you to the next door and you'll get like a backspace to get into that room. I ended up getting into these rooms because of the things that were working out for me, not the things that I was trying, because I thought that's what's going to make me make it.
From the Bronx to Minnesota to Brooklyn, from actor to playwright to improv comedy to commercial acting to podcasting to podcast producer, we have an amazing guest, Katharine Heller. Welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
I love your bio. You have a quite checkered, interesting past and path. So, Katharine, take us to that aha moment when you realized that you needed to make a change and claim your value.
When I finally called myself an actor, I had been professionally acting for 10 years. I had a commercial agent. I had all the things. I had a manager. And I was on a podcast, and it was an actor's podcast. And I was like, oh, that's so weird being on an acting podcast and they're like, just say the words. I was like, okay, I'm an actor. And I know it sounds weird to be, I don't like it when people say, just say what you want and you'll be great, you'll do it. But the second you start saying it out loud and owning your value, like you say, you become it. And I did, and I was, and it was the truth. It wasn't like I was saying, I'm an astronaut, like I was doing the thing. But saying it out loud was very scary to me because all my life it had been ingrained that actors don't make money or they're difficult, or they think about celebrities and famous people. You don't think about working artists. And that's something that I really needed to acknowledge, that I was a working artist, and I am. And so the second I started saying out loud, I'm an actor, on the podcast, The Actor's Grind, which I was a guest on, but still not able to say it, that changed so much in me and the way people saw me and the way people perceived me. A casting director I know listened to that episode and they were like, yeah, she's amazing. And I was like, oh, you know who I am? And it turns out they did, because I'm an actor. So I think saying it out loud, not being ashamed of who you are and what you are doing, is really important.
I so agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think many of us don't own who we are,
mm-hmm.
and we feel like a fraud, or we feel like we have all these limiting beliefs around it. So I love that you said, actors don't make money and actors are dramatic, crazy people and difficult
Fact.
to deal with, right?
Accurate.
Yeah. So yes, it might be true for some, but it doesn't have to be true for you.
Yeah, we're business people.
Yeah. And you can make money. I was an artist, painting artist my whole life. And I remember when I became a coach and I was going to coach artists, and I thought, well, you don't coach artists because they don't have any money. And, and so one of the coaches on a call said to me, well, why don't you find the coaches, the artists who do make money? And so it's true that some artists are starving and some artists are quite successful.
And also, may I say that you're more than just a coach and an art, like you've done a lot of amazing things,
producer.
producer, you have a very long career. So I really admire that. And yeah,
thank you.
And I think that's why we connected, because you get it. It is part business, and it is a lot of navigating the money part, but also the creative part, which is cool.
Yeah. And I think when you own, thank you for that. But when you own who you are,
mm-hmm.
you walk into a room differently. You
mm-hmm.
hold yourself differently. So what doors have opened up for you since you owned the actor role?
It's so funny because on that same episode, I should probably listen to it again. It was 7 years ago, I think. I said, stop beating. They said, what's a big advice to new actors? And I came up with this thing. I said, stop beating down on the doors that won't open. Go into the doors that open, even if you're like, I didn't want to do improv, but okay, I'm good at it. Because that door will lead you to the next door and you'll get like a backspace to get into that room. I ended up getting into these rooms because of the things that were working out for me, not the things that I was trying, because I thought that's what's going to make me make it. I've not been on Broadway yet, but I'll tell you what, I'm now Broadway adjacent due to many doors that I walked in because I did do a thing and was accepted. And I mean, granted, you can say no to things. I think that as an artist or any person in the world, especially women, you can always say no to an opportunity that doesn't feel right. But if it does, there's nothing wrong with saying yes. You can always leave. So, I forget the exact question, but as far as opening doors, go in through the back door if that's what's working out for you, because it's still a door. So
it's a door, and it's also, you said something important, which is that it's also a door that you want to go through.
Yeah.
And a lot of women and men say yes to opportunities that don't align with who they are.
Absolutely.
So how do you know, this is one of my favorite things to ask women, is how do you know to trust the opportunity is going to align for you?
I have learned to trust my gut more than what other people tell me. I very much appreciate advice, and I hear things from people I trust and love, but ultimately you have to make the decision for yourself. If it doesn't feel right, even if it's the right choice, and I talk about this on one of my podcasts, my advice podcast, we talked about a breakup, and a friend wanted another friend to break up with this person. And I was like, I was that person who was told by my friends to break up with this person, but unless you feel it, it's not real. So really do trust what your instinct is, and don't feel ashamed for trusting it if you're not ready for it, because then you're not ready for it. I think that for me, I've started listening to my gut, trusting those around me, but also ultimately, if I'm not feeling physically and emotionally comfortable walking into this space, I'm not losing an opportunity. This is not the 8 Mile movie. Well, I love Eminem, don't get me wrong, but the whole, you only have one shot in the spaghetti and the whatever, that's cool. You'll get another shot eventually. But if you walk in the room and you just aren't ready, that's fine. Don't walk in the room then. Trust your gut.
And sometimes you're just not ready. And
yes.
Your gut saying, don't do it yet.
Don't present that person, because that person is not going to get that job. And that's fine. You can take a risk, but, don't hate it.
And when you're not ready to hear something, you just can't.
Thank you. That's exactly right. You can't even hear the criticism that you need. My theater company just held auditions last weekend, and we do a thing where we tell people if they didn't get a call back, but we write them personal emails sometimes. And the ones that write back and say, I'd love some more criticism, it's like, oh, cool. Okay. If you're open to it. And that's a really, I will not forget those people. So unless you're open to understanding you may not get this job, don't, because then what about those people who, are feeling bitter because they thought they deserved it and didn't have an open mind of why maybe it didn't work out this one time,
Yeah, that brings up the topic of rejection.
Mm-hmm.
Very common in your industry in particular, but in dating, in pretty much anything that you are pitching, you're gonna get rejected, or I don't even call it rejection necessarily, but you said something about being able to take in what somebody says. So how do you advise people, or how do you deal with not getting the job or getting rejected?
I'm such a big fan of behavioral therapy for so many reasons. For my own mental health stuff as a kid, therapy and medication have helped a lot, but there is an aspect of behavioral therapy of pushing yourself to be this thought may seem, quote unquote crazy. I don't like using that word, but if you acknowledge that and then just try the thing, it does help. Having said that, being rejected on the regular is great. And I say that because it's not rejection. So for example, you may have seen or heard me on the TV commercials, right? That client of the people I auditioned for have brought me in 9-10 times before they cast me. To me, it's not rejection. It's getting to know you. It's almost like dating. I get sad when I don't get that big national commercial, because that means health insurance, as you know, and, exciting things because of, unions and pensions. But at the end of the day, understand that the fact that they're seeing you is really cool. In relationships, and this is where I want to hire you, I find that rejection is a very strong word for, it's not a you problem, it's a they problem. Being in a relationship and then losing that because of X, Y, and Z is very complicated. But I'm better off with professional rejection with good criticism, knowing that I still have my foot in the door. I have lost jobs or been up for jobs that I really wanted, but ultimately I've gotten other ones that I never thought I wanted. So I think keeping in mind with your question, have the attitude that you don't quite know what's going to be the best thing for you. And you can see it as rejection, or you can see it as this thing is not going to work out for us, but something else will.
Yeah, well said. I think that every door that closes is another open door.
I know. They say a window, right?
Right, the window
closes, which I think is a little bit weird because, like, have you ever escaped out of a window? It's painful. I feel like that's a really bad metaphor, but I'll go with that. When one door closes, yeah, the window's a little. Actually, maybe it's correct. The window's a little painful, but at least you got out.
Yeah, you got out. Or maybe you could drill a hole in the wall. I mean, it's whatever works for you.
That's why I keep an axe with me at all times. I'm pointing to a non-existent axe. I don't have one. I've never used it. And that's not true. I've used an axe once. It's scary. Don't do it.
I was going to say, maybe you need to get an axe.
Nah.
That's a good
Get an emotional axe in your head.
An emotional axe.
And by the way, I don't want to sound like Susie Sunshine of like, oh, rejection's great. It stinks. There's times where it's like, I didn't book this one commercial that was shot in, Shea Stadium with all these celebrities, and my friend booked it, and he was like, Katharine, it was the best day of my life. And I was like, and I got a call back, and I got so close. So yeah, rejection is no fun. Having said that, it's a fact of life. And going to the dentist, no fun, but you got to do it.
Right. Yes. And
speaking in improv terms.
Right. I see rejection as, yes, it's painful, but it gets less painful if you have a better way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that behavioral therapy or coaching or whatever you want to call it, it really helps you to process and not be slayed by it. And I think that, if you let it define you and let other people decide your value, because we are talking about value here,
mm-hmm.
It's really important not to let that happen. And I became a speaker, a public speaker, after I became a coach. And this was the most foreign thing in the world to me. I never was comfortable on a stage. I was petrified to talk in front of people. So much in my head and not other focused. And when I had a message to share, I realized that my why was more important than my fear. And I worked really, really hard to overcome it. And I kind of did everything backwards. So I got this opportunity to do a TEDx talk before I ever had been on a stage.
Which is amazing, by the way.
Right. It was amazing. But I said yes to it because I knew it would grow me. I was petrified, but I knew it would grow me. And then I started winning speech contests. But then I started losing speech contests. And I'm like, wait, what happened? And again, the rejection hurt, but it was important for me. And I now understand better, like, this is a great learning opportunity. It also helps me to be a better mentor to other speakers. And last night was a speech contest at Toastmasters. And so I was on the other side. I didn't present this year. But it's fascinating to watch because you can also learn from seeing why people don't win, instead of just feeling like, well, this isn't fair,
That's why I love watching auditions, because it reminds me of how I present myself. And, I just celebrated a birthday, another year around the sun. I'm in my 40s, and I will say till this day, being yourself is the hardest thing to do. I love acting because I can be someone else, but being in, presenting as you, they say public speaking is people's worst fear. It doesn't mean it gets easier. Yeah. But then you challenge yourself more. And I still, till this day, do not like public speaking. I enjoy it when it's done. I don't look forward to it. And when I teach classes, which I do, I get nervous. But if I'm given a script and like, here's your thing, I'm like, great. I don't have to be me. But being yourself, it's not, it gets easier, quote unquote, but it's okay that it's still terrifying. I mean, that's what I tell myself, at least, because it's how I feel. Even you telling that story, I was like, oh no, you had to speak at a thing. I avoid weddings where they're like, can you do a speech? I'm like, no, I just want to be there for you. I don't like going to a thing where I know I have to present, because it's scary. It's a responsibility. It's a lot.
I'm glad that you said that, because I think a lot of people would think, oh, you're an actor, you would be so comfortable giving a speech.
Oh, no. Give me a character. We're good. Me being me.
I
It's
totally
hard.
get that. I get
Mm-hmm.
that. And I think when I became comfortable talking to people that are, new people, I remember when I was about 18 and I spent a year, my gap year in Israel, and we went to a kibbutz, like a, farm, and met some really hot guys. And so we were all sitting together in this like shelter,
Of
and
course you
I
were.
had laryngitis, and
That's sexy.
it was sexy, but it was also like I was a character.
Mm.
Felt so comfortable because it wasn't me. And it's that I remember that in my head, like that gave me permission to just be
Yes.
myself, right?
Oh my God. I just had a visceral memory of when I had laryngitis after a wedding and I was in a car with some friends and they asked me about my life and I finally told them some deep stuff because I sounded like this, like a wise old lady. And that's incredible. Yeah. So what happened that summer? Did you? Yeah.
No, nothing happened. It
But they
was
all
like
liked you,
one
right?
night in the
You were
shelter.
holding court and they were like, ooh, and you were like, am I attractive to people? That's a realization I still have.
Right? But that authentic me, and we've talked about it a lot on this podcast, that being you, it just sounds so simple and it's so vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
You have to show up. You have to show yourself.
You have to
And
check in with yourself, and
yeah,
that's challenging.
yeah,
You can fake it out to everyone else around the room, but when you check in with yourself, my goodness, that's a trip.
that is a trip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's such a worthwhile thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
to really refine who you are. And you and I were talking before we recorded about saying no to people and not just tolerating or feeling obligated. And
Mm-hmm.
I find that the more authentically you become, you live an unapologetic life.
Mm-hmm.
You start not feeling guilty, saying, "No, that doesn't work for me. I'm sorry."
Also, no is a complete sentence.
It
Just those
is.
two letters.
Those
No.
two letters, yes.
If anyone fights you on it, not worth your time. You would have given them a monologue or the word no. They would have said the same thing. Don't waste
Correct.
your breath.
We call those boundary pushers.
Heck yeah, you do. By the way, congrats on your podcast. I'm sorry to switch this around. Your podcast is so amazing. You're doing such incredible work. When I met you, I was blown away by your kindness and curiosity. And I just want to thank you for doing what you do because it's important.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And I
I'm
appreciate
glad you showed up.
Oh, thank you. So, Katharine,
Yes.
you do so many things and have done so many things. Tell us what you're creating right now.
Most of the things that I've done have been a result of having to pay rent on your own. I will say that I do have friends who have families who support them financially or have paid for college, and no shame there. In fact, I think that teaching kids value and that they're worth something is so important to their success. I'm not against any of that. Having said that, the reason I started writing my own work and doing so many different jobs that have helped me create, because I didn't come from a family that had, X, Y, and Z, although I do have a lot of white lady privilege, and that's a thing. I'm very grateful these days for having that challenge. So what am I working on now? Well, I'm in a theater company called the New York Neo Futurists, and I go back into the show. It's a show that runs year round. We're in our 15th year in New York City. The original Chicago company is in their 30th year. There's a San Fran company and a London company. And we write our own work, and it's very challenging because you cannot lie in the show. We are playing us. When I auditioned for the company, I was terrified. You can't make a character. You are Katharine presenting, doing a monologue, writing plays with people. You write, direct, and perform. A lot of our company aren't even performers by history. It's writers who have to still get on stage and say the words, but the words carry themselves. So right now I am in a deep dive to write a lot of new plays for the company that I'm pitching next week. And it is really hard. So as I was behind the desk at auditions last week, looking at these amazing people coming in, just the bravery to just show up is so important and beautiful to me. I too have to show back up next week and sit in front of my peers and present them with my work. So currently I'm on a big writing spree. I'm always auditioning and I'm doing podcasting. The Struggle Bus is my advice show. We just have a new episode that came out. And Tell the Bartender, which is a storytelling podcast I've not released in a few months because I've been a little busy doing other things to make money because New York's expensive. So I'm writing a ton. I'm recording a ton, but I'm also doing other work, and I produce podcasts as well. So I deal with some amazing clients and edit and work with my company, my podcast production company. I have amazing employees, and I'm building that business as well. But other than that, I'm just like hanging out and chilling, just like, laying on the couch and eating some popcorn. No. So I don't think you need to be overextended to be successful, but unfortunately, a lot of people overextend themselves because of survival. But I'm very grateful for that because I learned a lot about myself.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you are resilient and productive and
I'd like
creative.
a vacation. I'm not going to lie. If you want to PayPal me, I could use like a couple days off, but we're good.
We'll put a GoFundMe link at the bottom of the show notes. Fund Katharine's vacation. She's
honestly
way too busy.
Being on the recipient end of that last year when I went through a tough time, friends actually got together and raised money for me to help me out during we can talk about this on air. It's fine. I had a really weird life shift with a breakup, but then I was attacked on the street and, I'm fine now, but it really does floor you. And you're like, oh, I had to live off of my savings for 2 months. And now I am, it does affect you.
Yeah.
And my friends, and I love my friends, but I'm always the helper. I hate being the helpee. But I understand that they were like, Katharine, you need help. And they raised a little money for me. And I was like, I hate this. I'll take it because I like to pay rent. But yeah, going back to the point, GoFundMe. Sure, I'll start one today for my vacation.
So a woman of value graciously receives. She doesn't just give.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you. I feel better now about my choices. You know what? Send me all their money.
That's right. All your money. Don't even keep any for yourself.
Not at all. Can't take it with you. I will do. I'll take it.
Katharine will take your money for you.
That's the name of the episode. Katharine will take your money. And your love and guidance.
Right? Only the parts that you like, the other parts you throw away.
Isn't that a mantra? It's keep what you want and leave the rest or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, feedback, right? I mean, it's people give feedback. And so let's talk about that for a minute, but then I have another question for you.
I like to look at your face and you're like, people give feedback. Pause.
People.
For it.
People give unsolicited feedback.
Sure.
People give solicited feedback. So, you're in a profession where people give a lot of feedback, or they give you no feedback and you have no idea why it didn't work. Do you have any advice for people about how to give and receive feedback?
Yes. Always ask for it if you want it, because as a person who has been asked for feedback, I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about giving it to you because, part of me is like, I want to, respect your space. So always ask for it. Follow up with people. As far as unsolicited feedback, woof. You and I grew up before the internet, correct? Well, I came into performing in one of the first web series in the entire world. And also we featured clips on YouTube when it first started back in the day. And let me tell you, I only read the comments section once in my life. And that was when I was in my early 20s. And I was like, why would someone say that? I specifically do not add comment sections to any of my podcasts. I don't read the comment section only because that's where humanity goes to die. I have read it for the sake of like a funny show opening or writing exercise, because sometimes it's like, really? And this is pre-Russian bots and all these things. But the truth is, if the person doesn't know you and they're not ready for an actual conversation, then you're not going to benefit. You're not getting the feedback. Now, having said that, I did read some of the things on the internet about my performance, and I went to the director of the show and I said, am I doing this? And they were like, oh, no, that's not happening. So search for it where you need it. If someone gives it to you unsolicited, do a big old heck no. Again, no is a complete sentence. You literally can just look in their face and be like, nah. It doesn't mean you're a snowflake, quote unquote. It doesn't mean you're insensitive. It just means that you're curating the information you need to make your work better. And it's no one else's business of how you do that.
I like that.
Yeah, me too. Years of learning the hard way, but yes.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people think it's helpful to just vomit out the feedback. Nope. And unless you've checked in with somebody, you are pushing your feedback on someone that and they never asked for it. I remember years ago when I first started coaching and I did my first workshop and I was petrified. And talk about like overdoing. I think I charged $25 a person, which I thought was highway robbery. So I felt so guilty because I felt like a fraud. I wasn't
how dare you.
experienced enough.
Charge money for your time in studio space.
I know. And then I also provided a table of food. Like I'd like.
Of course you did.
Right. So this was the old me. And my mom called me right before the workshop, and she said, "Don't be nervous." And
that's a tall order.
Yeah, it's also it's not honoring what I was really going through. Mm-hmm. And so I learned to start speaking up for myself and saying, "I really appreciate that you want to help. Can I tell you what would work better?" And for my mom. And I said, "You know what, I really would appreciate it if you just said, Sandy, I believe in you. You got this."
It's kind of like when someone's sick and I say, "Feel better." I've started not saying that, but you want to. I get the instinct, but it's like, you can't tell someone not to be nervous or not. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I said, being nervous is actually part of the thing. Like it's like public speaking. I am going to be nervous every time I get up there.
Always.
But it's telling somebody to stop feeling something is not as helpful as saying, like, turn that nervousness into excitement. I know you've got this. I believe in you. We're really bad at supporting people.
I've just started saying, like, yeah, you're still going to crush it. And then usually people look at me and they're like, I know, like I know I'm going to be great or fine, know? And then someone's like, I know you're going to be great. I'm like, thanks for the vote of confidence.
Yeah. So what do you like to hear when you're getting up for an audition or something?
Okay. The only thing I have as an actor, superstitions, is break a leg, not good luck. I don't know why. All I know is the results I see. Yes, I have an anxiety disorder. Give me one thing. Say break a leg, don't say good luck. I get very mad when people in my life I've told this to, and I don't tell it to many people. But when you say that, I'm like, don't. Even fellow actors, I'm like, why'd you say that? Because I feel that's the only thing. I like people who listen. I have to say, the best thing I heard last year after my crappy things, somebody said to me, and I love this person very much, but I was being very honest about being depressed and talking about, like, don't worry, I'm not suicidal. I'm feeling really down right now. Rightfully so. And they said, I'm worried about you. And I was like, why? I'm being honest. I'm not pretending that everything is okay. And I told my friend the story, and she said, Katharine, I'm going to say something. It's going to sound weird, but I've seen you go through all this. I was there the day of finding out about the cheating. I was there the day you got attacked on the street. I was there, and I've never said I'm worried about you. She goes, if anything, I am not worried about you because you're showing up, you're being honest, and you're going through it. And that was surprisingly the most kindest thing I heard last year was, I'm not worried about you. I really like that.
Yeah, I like that too.
But as far as performing or getting up there, I just like hearing hey, you're going to be great, or you're doing great, you know?
Yeah, when somebody believes in you, they believe in your greatness. I think the worry piece, I actually wrote about this because that also was a mom thing.
Oh, no. And for sure, I get that, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I kind of dissected it as to why it bothered me so much. And I realized that it then took the focus off of me and made it about that person.
Yes. Oh, I'll tell you something after this, but it turns out, I'll say it fine. The person who said that to me, it turns out a couple days later, they called me. It turns out they were going through something similar and didn't want to tell me about it, which I was like, that's fine. You can.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, zip.
Yeah. No, that's deflection. It's like, I'm worried about you, but really I'm worried about me.
I see a psychologist every week, and I check in with a psychiatrist because I used to be on medications, and I, occasionally take things for, flights, normally Xanax. But I check in with doctors is the point, because I don't like doing that, much like going to the dentist, but you got to check in. And during my rough year, I was like, to all of them, I was like, am I depressed? Should I be on more medication? Like, what is it? And each of them said, Katharine, we've known you for, X amount of years. And honestly, you're reacting to a thing that happened to you in a very healthy way. And unlike 10 years ago, you're not deflecting. you're just saying, yeah, I'm really sad. And unfortunately, a lot of the peak of my depression happened during a time when there was a lot of public suicides happening. And I understand that people get nervous and they're like, reach out to friends. But my goodness, I have very, very strong feelings about be very careful when you talk about suicide. Personally, I've had 0 suicidal ideations in my life, but it runs in my family and I know people very close to me. It's a hot topic for me. So when people saw the news and then use that to be like, are you okay? And it's like, I'm allowed to be sad. And I just want people to know that things are complex. And if friends are being honest with you, that's not the worst thing. In fact, it's good. If someone's like, I'm sad today, you know.
I so agree with you. I think we have such a problem with expressing emotion, especially anything that's negative. And I don't believe it's a negative emotion. I think it's part of the full spectrum of it being human. And if you only have permission to say, everything's great, which is the way most people express
It's
themselves.
for someone else's comfort, not yours.
Yeah. I mean, a good friend is going to be honest with you. A good friend should have permission to be fully expressed. And in any good relationship, you want to be able to say, I'm really sad right now. I'm really upset. I need to talk to you about this. And to have the other person put their ego aside and be present and listen.
Yeah. I learned that, I'm still going through this when you have a friend who has cancer or anything, and that person all of a sudden disappears off the map, right? I was talking to my therapist years ago and a really good friend of mine. I was like, but I want to like talk to her and she won't return my phone call. She's like, Katharine, you're making her cancer about you. She may be tired or sick, but there's many ways to reach out to someone that doesn't involve their work. So for example, I don't like checking in with people these days by saying, how are you? If someone's sick, instead I just send a heart emoji. Thank goodness for text, am I right? Or just say like, hey, thinking of you, and they can respond. Or my, case in point, my therapist at the time was like, why don't you just send a funny letter? And I didn't hear back from this person I'm still amazing friends with for months and months. And she's like, those letters you sent me were really helpful, but she didn't feel like she had to respond to me or write thank you cards or anything because, when you have cancer, apparently it's exhausting. And friends who make it about them or how are you feeling today? That's putting a lot on that person who's just trying to heal and it's not about you. It doesn't mean they don't want your friendship all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I had a very close friend who had called me with terrible news that she had stage 4 lung cancer.
Oh.
Not having been a smoker, she suddenly got diagnosed and she had a very
not
short
uncommon.
time. Yeah. And she was very clear with me about what she wanted from me. She said, I'm not up for a visit. I don't want to talk on the phone. I will let you know when I'm ready. And I gave her so much space. And it was the hardest thing in the world for me.
Right.
But I know what it's like to be on the other end. And I had a sick child my firstborn, and people said and did things that were insensitive. And I don't blame them. They didn't know what to say or do. But it teaches you how to be with sickness, how to be empathetic.
Yeah.
She never actually gave me permission to come until her husband called me when she was they had given up all hope. And they said, he said, she's in the hospital. She can't kick you out. She was pissed, but
I think I'd be too. I'd be like, I just want to like die in peace and not look like crap in front of my friends.
Yeah. So I didn't stay that long, but it was an awkward visit. And at the end, her family thanked me for not imposing myself. They said there were other people who kept coming over thinking they were helping. And then they asked me to deliver her eulogy. And it was like, this was right after the TED Talk. And I was just like, oh my God, I have to give a eulogy for one of my best friends in front of hundreds of people. And I have to represent like her friends. It was such a tall order, but it was also humbling. And
it sounds like you were a really good friend to her through all the, oh gosh, I'm going to start crying. Yeah. And at the end of it all, that's a friend. That's a good friend, I am currently going through a thing with a friend who's sick, and it just pains me that she's kind of like done the cutoff moment for a second because she needs to heal. And I have to remind myself literally every day, even today, I was like, should I call her? And it's like, no, she knows I'm around. Yeah. Every few days I check in and just send like a funny GIF or something, but
I think letting somebody know. There was a woman who was one of my coaches who developed some terrible cancer.
Mm.
And she asked people to send cards. She said,
Mm.
can you send
Yeah.
cards and handwritten letters? And so people were doing it throughout. And, you know,
And it
it's,
gives the person the agency. Like, I know it sounds weird to like coach your friends, but I get it. They don't know. And there's times where I've told friends like, oh, this thing happened to me, but I don't want to talk about it. And they're like, but I want to talk about it with you. And I'm like, I don't. But gives them the agency of like, at least they know. And, you know, there's times where you got to remind people. It's
yeah,
someone who's been reminded. And I think that's a
yes,
really nice gift.
I do too. I think,
Yeah.
I think we have to educate people.
Tell
When
people
I
what you
got
need.
divorced, people would say, I'm so sorry. And I finally stopped and said,
Congratulations.
right. I said, you know, can I tell you what would be better? It's like just letting people know I appreciate that you want to support. And this is not supportive because I'm really happy.
Yeah.
You know, it's not easy, but I'm really happy on the other side. So it's not everybody who goes through a divorce is somebody you have to feel sorry for. Not
Ever.
everybody who's sick wants to hear from you. So we have to really check in with people.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back to your work.
Oh boy. Okay.
Well, this is a
Let's talk
great
about cancer
conversation.
for like 10 more minutes.
I had a question when you were talking about all the things that you're juggling.
Mhm.
If money was no object and time was no object, what
What?
would you be focusing on? Is there like one thing that you would be doing more of?
I've always wanted to have a large family. I've always wanted to have kids and like thousands of dogs. I want like 10 country houses and 10 Upper West Side, not Upper West Side, actually more like West Village homes. I want to be performing on stage. That's my happy space. I mean, film and commercials pay a lot more, but theater is my jam. I get like emotionally and intellectually aroused when I walk into a theater. The first thing I do, and I don't tell people this, but I slowly like smell the stage at some point. Like I find a way to like, I'm gonna use the bathroom, but I lean down and I kind of like, that's my home. And I don't know where that came from, but I've always felt that way. Theaters are magic to me. When I walk into Broadway theater, I start to cry.
Oh,
Off Broadway theaters, the theater I work in now, somebody cracked a joke like, oh, back at this crappy theater that I work in, which I've done amazing work in. And I'm like, yeah, it's a beautiful, special, magical place. I work in a really gorgeous Lower East Side theater with history. It's a history about it. So if I had all the money in the world, first of all, I'd distribute it evenly to people who need it. But I would buy like a lot of homes and have a home for dogs, kids, and friends and
wow.
make theater. Yeah.
Were you always in theater, like from a young age?
Hilariously, yes and no. So my mother made the very, very strong mistake of taking me to see Annie when I was 6 years old. And I was like, oh, wait, kids are doing that? Screw that, I want to do it. And she's like, yeah, I can't be a stage mother. And she goes, the day you can get your own headshots and take yourself to an audition, do it. So when I turned 18, I did. And I got the lead in, well, I first got cast in the show and then I was the understudy for the lead. And then I got that. And it was back in the day before I, cell phones. So they were calling my mom's apartment because that was the only phone I had. And my mother called me and goes, what's going on? You're in a show? And I was like, yes, Mom. But I like that she wasn't a stage mom. Well, first of all, she couldn't have done it because she was a single mother. But I did learn this discipline of, okay, I got to get money for headshots. I got to do this on my own. So no. And also my high school did not have theater. I went to Bronx Science. Hold for applause. No, it's one of the very few schools that does not have a theater program. So I joined the speech team because it was the closest thing to like, ooh, monologues, when I was in elementary school, I was in a couple plays and again, I was hooked, but I don't want to be like, it was in my blood when I was a kid. I wanted to do it, but I didn't get to do it until I was older. And when I went to college, that was transformative. I was able to do theater there and it was everything I wanted it to be. I was right, but I'm glad my mom didn't stage mom me. Or am I? I don't know. Would have had more opportunities? Who's to say? But I couldn't imagine her being able to take me on things. As someone now who's an actor who auditions with kids and their parental figures, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work on their part. So,
Yeah. So it was in your blood since you were 6.
I just enjoyed that. I also want to be a veterinarian, and part of me is like, should I try doing that? I'm sure I'd love that too. But yeah, seeing kids on stage, I got mad. I was like, wait, this is not just an adult thing. How come they get to do it and I don't?
So we're going to get you thousands of dogs, and
Thank you.
you'll be the veterinarian,
Mm-hmm.
actress,
Mm-hmm.
mother of many children.
Yeah, I just want to like have a lot of cool things around me. But I do. And ultimately, just even talking to you, I'm reflecting. And I think that you're like me in that when you say the things out loud, you start to reflect, which is why I love doing podcasting. I actually have the life I created the life I wanted. If you think about it, I have this amazing theater company family. I have friends in my life. I have kids in my life. I have dogs in my life. Yeah.
You don't need anything else.
I mean, money is nice. So
I
go
was going
back
to
to my
say.
GoFundMe.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're not canceling the GoFundMe
What
now.
about you? If there's one thing for you right now, zero money concerns. You live in a nice place. I'm looking at your apartment house. You have a house?
It's a house, yes.
Who has those? What about you? One thing, just one thing you wish you had right now.
That's a good question. And
Or
I'm
do you have it
turning
all?
the tables, you podcast host, you.
Of course I
The first thing that comes to mind, well, first travel came to mind. I don't travel as much as I'd like to. And I
Where do you
traveled
want
a
to go?
lot before I got married and before I started having children. Where would I like to go? Spain.
When are we going?
Big one. Okay, we'll talk after. Maybe
Barcelona.
GoFundMe will fund our trips together.
God, Barcelona is amazing. And I speak Spanish, so I can get us through. Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for a Spanish-speaking travel partner.
I have a nice Castilian accent. I can do that.
Awesome.
I know where the biblioteca is.
Beautiful. That has to do with books.
It's very common that when you learn Spanish, like, ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? Like, it's a very library. Where's the library? I know where the library is. Yeah.
Okay, well, good. Then we don't need anything else, especially if the library has beds. We could sleep there.
Exactly.
All right, we're all set. My daughter's in-laws live in Gibraltar.
So, really? Have you been?
I have not, but they just went with their two little girls, and she's FaceTiming with me and showing, here, there's the rock, Mom. There's the rock of Gibraltar. Yeah, it was so cool. And there's monkeys everywhere, so the monkeys jump on your car, and it's like cats in Israel are everywhere. So I go to Israel a lot. My daughter lives there, so I've been going every 6 months or so now. Leaving in a couple of weeks. So all right, we're going to Barcelona together.
Yes.
Awesome.
We'll stay near Las Ramblas. There's a youth hostel there that I stayed at when I was in my 20s. It'll be fine.
Oh yeah, I'm totally into the hostel lifestyle.
You know where I want to go? Iceland. I have friends who were like, check out the geysers. And I realized that's a place I've done a layover there because Iceland Air is actually an excellent plane place. It goes everywhere, but the hub is obviously in Reykjavik. And every time I land there, I'm like, it's like Mars. Like, it's this gorgeous craters of rocks, and it's really cool. And I'm someone from the Bronx and pretty much only spent most of my time in the United States, some in Canada and in France with family because I'm French. My mother is. I realize there's so many parts of the world I just haven't seen, so many landscapes that are really different, and geysers. I've never seen one. Heard of them. Are they real? Not till I see it. So let's go to Iceland after that.
Okay. I have seen geysers though. So
what? Where?
In the United States. So
I know we have them, but
yeah. So I traveled cross country when I was like 23, 22. Nice. I met a guy and we started dating, and 2 weeks later he said, hey, I'm traveling cross country. I'm driving somebody's car across the country. You want to come?
That's it.
And I was like, yeah, I don't really know you very well, but sure. And it was amazing to see the country and just jump on these opportunities to just say yes to, travel. We didn't get along very well, but I got to see the country. So I got to see glaciers and geysers and hot springs and
what's the main one in our country? The main geyser, the Old Faithful. Where's
one of those national park.
Did you see it?
I don't think I saw that one. But we went through all the national parks. We camped out throughout the trip, and then we went back through Canada, through Lake Louise and Banff and all those amazing places. And it was an adventure. And Utah is so unlike the Bronx. It's just about as far from the Bronx as you can get. The colors, the pink rock, the just, it's magical.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're camping out and you're seeing the stars without any light pollution, and it's like being in a planetarium. It's like,
Exactly.
I mean,
It's like,
that's really
it's just like the Museum of Natural History when in the 80s, when you're like, what is this?
that's pretty
So many
pathetic
lights.
that we
Yeah.
that we compare the sky to the museum instead of the other way around.
My reference. And I have been, you know, like I said, I went to Camping Canada, and I've done the, 2-week long canoe trips and done portages, or I met a beaver, you know, like I've done things, but I'm like, nature, that's wild. And I feel like I could see more of it.
Yeah, yeah. So when you said geyser, I thought you were saying guys. They have great guys.
Guys, sir. Sure. Go on.
So if we could see the geysers and meet great guys,
Mm-hmm.
that would be the best of all worlds.
Wouldn't it though? It's okay. I don't expect both. No, I have a lot of great guys in my life actually, so I'm very grateful for that. I may not be dating them, but I'm yeah. There's some really good people out there that I'm very happy to know.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, it sounds like you're surrounded by lots of good stuff.
Yeah, I am.
So tell me about the future. What's your vision for your future, for yourself and for other people?
Great question. I am at a place in my life where I'm really appreciating the life I curated for myself. If you think about it, all the things that I am experiencing now are things that I've worked hard for, and I'm trying to acknowledge and be grateful for it more. I'm in an amazing theater company. I'm looking forward to writing more. I'm looking forward to writing more full-length plays, going out. I mean, the company is amazing because people who've been in the company were a very tight family of artists, but they don't just create in the company, they create outside the company, and we do each other's plays. And there's Broadway, you know, people who've been on Broadway or written for Broadway or in the, like, it's a wonderful community of people who are just creating constantly from age 20 to age like 60, 75. And I'm so grateful to be seen by these people and also feel inspired by them. So in the next few years, I'd love to write more, perform more, all those things. I would like to buy a home. I'd like to, I love my rent stabilized apartment. It's pretty rad, but I'd like to travel a little bit more. I'd like to be easier on myself. I'd like to not feel like I have to work as hard. I want to build my podcast production business to the point where I am a major job creator and just crushing it and employing a ton of amazing people, and then still able to take vacations and volunteer and pay for volunteer work. I currently work part-time at a company that's amazing, and they pay for volunteer work that you choose to do on your own. And it's such a wonderful company culture. I want to expand that all over the world. I want to help people and inspire, and also fight climate change, because that's the thing I'm very passionate about as well.
Wow.
Yeah, so like nothing big, you know, just like
little things.
like groceries in the afternoon, and that's about it. And just, you know, changing the world, whatever. I just want to be surrounded by the people that inspire me and continue to inspire, and make a big old love surrounding feeling. Love circle? I don't know. Not like Woodstock though. That got sketchy.
I like the love circle. No, I have this vision of like radiating energy out into the world.
Yes. But I forget who said this. I heard this recently. I always hear these amazing things and then never can credit people. But no matter what kind of touch you do, know that you are affecting somebody by everything you do in the world. And that's a lot of pressure to do good things, because there's times I'm on the subway and I'm like, but just know that you have a huger impact than you think. Yeah.
I agree with that 100%. I think I spent most of my life thinking I had zero impact. Now it's time for the lightning round. Are you ready?
Always.
All right. She was born ready. What was the number one thing holding you back from becoming a woman of value?
My own feeling of lack of value due to the abusive relationship of my father, who was very emotionally abusive for many years, which I'm still grappling with and not realizing how much it affected me. Yeah, we're estranged now, but he really did a number on us. So yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, years of therapy, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
That
well,
Michael Jackson documentary just floored me. I mean, he didn't sexually abuse me, but the abuse that happens, the manipulation, the way children are taught, that, yeah, it's very, very, very sad. And it's kept me from achieving my potential. Everyone's like, oh my, you're so great. You should be making more money. You should be more successful. It's like, yeah, I should.
anytime somebody uses the word should, that's a warning sign.
Oh, that's what I should be doing. Oh, great. Thank you
Thanks.
so much for telling me that. I had no idea. Wow.
Good
Yeah.
advice.
So I'm still navigating that. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's in my career as a dating coach, I always go back to the family blueprint. That is where we start.
Blueprint is such a great word for it. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. How we get it downloaded and you start connecting the dots. Oh, and that's why I keep attracting emotionally abusive people. Oh, that's why I attract people who can't love me back.
Yeah.
And,
or, oh, somebody says they love me. Nailed it. Like, okay.
Yeah. Well, that's a longer conversation, but
yeah. But anyway, that's the one major thing that's always held me back is
and you're
feeling
working
like
on
I
it.
didn't deserve it.
Yeah, which is good. And that's something I've noticed throughout this conversation, that even when you were talking about the depression, you were working on it. You weren't just wallowing and stuck, you know, permanently stuck and feeling like a victim. You actually sought help and you went out and did that, which is commendable.
Thank you. Therapy's hard and expensive.
Yes.
It's something that is not fun. It's not like this amazing experience. I mean, yes, but you know, thank you. It's a lot of work, but thank you. I want to just be the best person I can be while I'm on this world, on this planet. Sure.
Yes. On this planet, in this planet, whatever you want to be.
I'm a geyser. I'm just like,
she's shooting out of the planet. That's the goal, is you're going to be in this world and shooting out.
Yes.
All right. Another question for you.
Go on.
What is something that you failed at that taught you an important life lesson?
Oh, acting. 1,000% performing everything. I thought I was really great when I was younger. And then I started auditioning and I was like, oh, I'm not that good at this. And I loved hearing the feedback. But again, positive feedback that I searched out. And I was like, why am I not doing this well? And they're like, oh, here's why. Thanks for asking. And, you know, that's very, anything you do, just if you're not doing well at it, ask why.
Yeah. And
I was not a good actor.
refine. Well, so, you know, some people, you have to take a step back and say, is this really what I should be doing? If I keep hearing the same thing over and nothing's changing.
Yeah. Film acting is still an enigma to me. I'm getting better at it. I still take classes. Everyone's like, but you've been on commercials. I'm like, yeah, I take classes. I still watch myself. Like theater acting, I know I can do. I can project all that fun stuff. But film acting is a totally different animal. That's humbling. It still is.
Yeah. But learning and growing and being willing to take the classes. That's what separates you from people who just say, you know, those people are so mean that they gave me that negative feedback.
Yeah, it's not negative. If they take the time to give you feedback,
it's a gift. It's a gift,
it is.
especially if it's done kindly.
Yes.
What is the best advice that you can give a woman who has given up her value in the past and she wants to step into becoming a woman of value?
Wow. Okay. Yes. I've thought about this. You're not alone. I too feel that way every day. And no is a complete sentence. I think acknowledging that that's an okay thing to feel gives people the agency to acknowledge, it's not just me. Yeah, we're taught, there comes my New York accent, we're taught from a very young age to not be valued. So the fact that you feel that way is not your fault. And it's work. And I see you and I hear you and I'm here for you.
I love that.
Yeah, it's real.
Yeah, I mean, we're not alone. I think when we feel separate and alone is the scariest and most lonely. I can't think of another word right now.
No, and I really love these women who come out and are like super strong and all these things, but acknowledge that there's nothing wrong with you for feeling that way. If anything, you're picking up what the world's throwing down.
Yeah.
So,
and I think when you hear somebody's struggles and you know that it didn't just come because they were lucky. A lot of women talk about luck. It's actually a diminishing thing to say. Women who are celebrities who get up and accept awards and they say, I'm so lucky to get this. And it's like,
No, you
no,
earn
damn it,
that.
you earned it, right? You worked hard. And to appreciate that, that it came with struggle, it came with hard work. No matter
I would,
how famous you are, it's still work. You can be forgotten in a second.
oh, and you are. And I always say, it was taught to me that, you deserve it is a nice word, but you earned it is stronger. So I always say that to someone when someone's accomplished thing, I'm like, you earned this. I'm just laughing because I did a FedEx commercial. I guess I can say brand names, whatever, it's fine. Last year, and I did a little bit of improv at the end. And one of the things I kept is I said to the person before I closed the door on them, before being like, "Oh, here's your new office." I went, "Hey, congratulations, you earned it." But that's something that I mean genuinely. But I said it as like jokingly in the character at the time, and they kept it. And I laugh every time I think about that they kept that. But it sounded condescending. But the truth is, I always say that to people. You earned it.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just reminds me of when people say, I'm so proud of you. That's also not a great thing to say.
I know, and I still say it. I still say
Yeah.
it sometimes because it's true, but I qualify it, be like, but not like in that way. Like I really am proud of. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like you should be so proud of yourself.
Mm.
I have watched you blossom. I have watched you grow. I
Mm-hmm.
am celebrating you. There's so many
Mm.
ways to say
That's true.
that. And I feel that way every time I complete a coaching, you know, whatever, not a session, but like when people are done. And I have watched them grow into these amazing women who now can run with it. They know how to have these tough conversations. They know how to set boundaries. They know how to make great connections, and they love themselves more. And it's just like watching and remembering that first phone call where some of them come to me crying and feeling broken, and then seeing like, I'm confident, I can do this. It's the best.
And saying I'm proud of you, I get that it can feel so condescending, but I think that it's the way you deliver it. Like if you just look them in the eye and you're like, I'm so proud of you. I don't mind hearing it when I know it comes from a place of like direct love,
Yeah, totally.
I dig that.
Do you have any books that have helped you along the way?
Yeah. Well, this is getting super personal, but I have OCD, and I know a lot of people like to say like, I'm so OCD. I do. It's a very serious condition. Brain Lock is a book that changed my entire life and helped me understand that I wasn't alone and that it actually is my brain telling my psyche to do a thing over and over and over again. That's actually a real medical condition and not just you being an anxious lady. So any book that has anything to do with mental illness or anxiety or anything you're feeling that helps qualify from a medical standpoint, not that you should need that, that did help me a lot. Brain Lock changed my life. And I can't believe I'm saying that. That and A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, which is a lovely book about a teenagers coming to adulthood in Brooklyn in the 1920s. I love this book. I've read it over and over and over again. So as far as fiction, about a strong woman who grew up in a household of strong women in a time when women just were not encouraged to be strong has really changed me. Yeah. So A Tree Grows in Brooklyn and Brain Lock.
That's an interesting combination.
Isn't it? I can't believe I'm I thought about this as well. I'm like, sure, I'll say it.
So I don't usually talk about this, but my
Go
father, you're talking about mental illness and normalizing the conversation is really important. And my father comes from a family of mental illness, and he had a sister who had a lobotomy. I mean, this is a long time ago. And so there's bipolar, there's depression. And so I grew up in a home with a depressed father who was bipolar too. And when my parents got divorced, he became dependent on electric shock therapy. And my brother and I took turns taking him, and because at one point he was an outpatient, and I actually was very humbled by the experience, and I wrote about it. I took my computer one day to the hospital, and we're waiting in the waiting room, and it's like a drive-in. You drive in depressed, you drive out undepressed. You just like, and so I just started recording everything he was
Call that
saying.
McDonald's.
McDonald's of depression, yes, of electric shock treatments. And I mean, sometimes when you go through big trauma, you kind of, you have to develop a sense of humor to be able to deal with it. And listening to the families and how much love people had for their loved one who was in the waiting room with us. And just hearing my father's very self-centered conversation, but also kind of very simple. A lot about how much people loved him and honored him and how important that was to him. And I just recorded the whole conversation, just word for word, without any judgment, without any of my own feelings about it. And what I noticed was it gave me much more compassion for him, because a lot of the time I was upset. Like,
oh, it's upset. Yeah. Having a parent go through a thing like that. No, even if it's not their fault or they're sick, it's upsetting.
Yeah, it's upsetting. And it was hard. It was hard having a father that I felt I had to take care of for a lot of my life. And so, it's been a lot of work and processing all this stuff. And so, yeah, I totally understand mental illness of our family variety. And we also have a lot of anxiety in our family. So,
and a lot of people experience that. Even if you don't have a quote unquote diagnosis, it's okay to feel anxious. It's the world. It's not, don't feel weird. And one of the most enlightening things that was ever told to me by my therapist, or no, was it somebody, a family member? I won't say who, because I don't want to reveal who in my family is in the psychological adjacent world. But they said to me, diagnoses and DSM codes are just for insurance companies. Your diagnosis is your own. It could be a mixture of many things. And you don't need to get this one thing to be diagnosed. That's for insurance companies. And people can have a mishmash of a lot of things. And it's okay. And seasonal affective disorder is a thing. And random onset anxiety or depression because of a tragic event or a trauma is a thing. You don't need to have a chemical imbalance. It's very layered, and it's not one thing or the next. So I talk about mental illness all the time because I'm fascinated by the brain and the ways in which the brain protects itself. And, I have mental illness on both sides of my family. So it's like, whoopsie-doodle. Here we are. And like I was saying earlier, there's also suicide, stuff in my family, which thankfully that's the one gene I didn't get, but it's real. And all that stuff is passed down. But also there's world trauma. There's even just watching the news can be traumatic. Even just hearing stories can be traumatic. And for me, 9/11 really messed me up. And I'm realizing more and more, we don't talk about 9/11 that much, my friends and I who were there and all the things. But lately we have been, and we've been saying, are you feeling a little messed up? Because I still do. And things like that. So any event in your life can cause a thing. And it's okay to be anxious or sad. Yeah. And I think people feel they have to have a diagnosis and have to have it. And you don't. It's okay to feel that way.
Is there anything you would like to tell our listeners about how to be with people who have any kind of mental illness?
Oh my goodness. Just listen and know that it's not the way it's projected on TV or used to be. I think now people are doing a better job of it. Just know we can be funny and, not want to talk about a thing, or we're not. Yeah. The way it's shown in the media years and years ago is this wild person in the therapist's office and the therapist hugs them. I'm talking about Good Will Hunting. Listen, therapist should hug you. That's a thing that shouldn't happen. It's so, it still makes me so angry when they show therapy in movies. And I'm like, I know everyone in Hollywood's been to a therapist. Why are you showing this totally incorrect thing? So yeah, if you meet someone who talks about mental illness, know that the fact that they're telling you, that's a huge hurdle. So just listen, ask questions if you want, but just be open to the fact that, and also this is very important. Whenever there's a mass shooting and they talk about mental illness and guns, and I totally think that's very important to talk about, but people who suffer or survive or whatever you want to call it, live with mental illness like myself, are more likely to be harmed than be the harmer. I'm probably not going to hurt you, by the way. Mentally, maybe, who knows? But no, I'm not going to do. I think there's a big stigma about, oh, you're mentally ill, then you're violent. That's not true at all. We're very sensitive. We're most likely like watching a Hallmark commercial and crying. Maybe that's the worst thing that I'll do to you is be like, have you seen that Hallmark commercial? I think that I just want people to, I think that would be the number one thing I want people to know is, hey, we're just like you.
Yeah. So just be less judgmental, more open, better listeners.
And we're all going through something.
Yes. I think that's good advice for everybody about anybody.
Yes. Everyone's going through something. Tomorrow could be a really bad day for you. And I'd be like, oof, I'm grateful, Who's to say?
And I think we have to pay attention to the traumas, the little T traumas that don't feel like big, and they do make an impact. And
I see a lot of men, women are encouraged to talk about their feelings and cry. Men are not. And I see a lot of that in my male friends who are like, oh, I don't need to see a therapist. I'm fine. And then they do something terrible to a female friend of mine. And I'm like, no, you've had traumas in your life too. You need to address it. And put it that way, like, it's not a matter of not being strong enough or being like, I can handle it. It's that, think about the things that you will do to other people that you don't realize can hurt them. How about that? If you can't do it for you, do it for them. Get some therapy.
Yeah.
Therapy is very expensive. It's a very privileged thing to have, but do access your emotions, please. Please, everyone.
Everyone, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I like what you said about thinking about other people, because it's easier to think about other people than it is to think about ourselves.
I love this piece of advice I got from my co-host of Struggle Bus, Sally Tamarkin, who's brilliant. She always says, if you have a problem and it's really bad and you're feeling like you can't qualify it or get it out there, imagine your best friend having that exact same problem and telling it to you, and you will be in a blind rage on their behalf. Be that best friend on your behalf. Mm-hmm. Think about that. It's not, again, I already spoke about the Michael Jackson documentary, but it wasn't until these men had young boys that they started thinking, well, I couldn't save myself, but if that happened to my kid, I'm now furious. And they were able to be furious on their behalf because they saw it through the lens of someone else. So understand that if you're going through something really, really bad, please be kind to yourself. Think about if your best friend tells you the same thing. Do some role play. I've done it. I talk to myself all the time. It helps.
Yeah. And we're so good at the negative self-talk. The inner critic comes in and we listen to those voices to bring in the kind, compassionate parent that we never had. And, that voice, right?
victory spin in my chair. Yeah. We listen to that voice.
Yes.
Listen to the other voice. Talk to yourself.
Talk to yourself kindly. Yeah, we're so good at, oh my God, I'm not enough. I can't do that. No, that's terrible. No.
Oh,
I'm not pretty. Oh my God, that guy once said that I had big thighs. So my thighs are thunderous. And, it's just got to stop. Katharine.
Yeah.
The last question.
All right.
How would you like to be remembered?
Wow. Oh my God. Sandy, that is a doozy. I've thought about this as well. I would like people to know that I've spent a lot of my life explaining why I'm flawed and that it's okay to be flawed. And that's why I've been a little bit of an oversharer, because I think it's very empowering to be like, I'm not perfect. And as such, if I've hurt anyone or unintentionally or whatever, it's always unintentional, that, I'm so sorry if I've ever been a bad friend or not a good enough, whatever. But it's okay it was not intentional and I'm a flawed person. And by that, I mean, we all have things that we're taught that we just try to work on. That's that weird.
So
I tried. How about that?
I tried.
Yeah. But I really think it's important to recognize that everyone's got some feelings about things, and the world's hard. And I think that the more people talk about it and try not to be like, I'm this idol, I'm a hero, I'm perfect, just be like me and you'll be fine. I don't like that advice giving. I prefer just honesty about things that, we struggle with.
Yeah. So permission more people to be a full self with, warts and all.
Yeah. A colleague and friend of mine passed away, unfortunately, from cancer years ago. And she used to end all of her emails with "be excellent to each other." And I think about that every day.
I like that.
At the least, we can just try to be excellent to each other. Whatever your version of excellent is, just attempt to be excellent to each other.
That's a great thing to strive for. And everyone can do it.
I mean,
yeah, what a good world that would be.
Yeah.
So Katharine, thank you so much for being on my show today. What a great conversation. We went to all places.
I had no doubt that this would be an amazing conversation, which is why I took meticulous care to be like, I had to reschedule, but here I really thank you for this opportunity. And you're really doing amazing stuff. So thank you for that. You are excellent to other people. And I think that you do have an impact on the world in a good way. You are a joy geyser.
A joy geyser. I love that.
Yeah, why not?
Thank you. From one joy geyser to another. Tell our listeners how they can find you.
Yeah, sure. If you have nice things to say, great. If you don't, I don't want to hear it. Unless you have like constructive criticism, you can go on to KatharineHeller.com, KatharineHeller.com, Twitter @SPKHeller, special K, was my nickname in college, cereal, not the drug. And Facebook or whatever. I'm big on the Twitters and the Instagram. Same thing with Insta, SPK Heller. Get into it. Get into the Struggle Bus and Tell the Bartender podcast. And don't judge me for not releasing an episode for Tell the Bartender for another month or so because it's been busy.
And nobody notices.
Shh, nobody notices. Yes.
Thank you, Katharine.
Thank you, Sandy.
If you would like to step more fully into your value, grab a free copy of The Ultimate Guide to Becoming a Woman of Value on my website, thewomanofvalue.com. Just click the link at the top of the homepage. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to click the subscribe button in your listening app. And if there's something in this episode that inspired you, please share it with others, because the more we share these inspirational stories, the more women of value we will have in this world. I'll see you next time.